It's been a little bit disappointing for the Blue Jays. I think when you look at this team and you go, well, they're a playoff team. They're in the wild card, but I think they expected better. I don't think they expect to be 10 games back of the Rays. Now, nobody expected Tampa to be this good. That's certainly well within reason to make a point in favor of the Blue Jays. But this was a team with aspirations of winning the division and going beyond. That doesn't mean you can't be a third wild card and still go deep, but they've really been in herky-jerky. And one of the things I've noticed with their offense is they have this propensity to put up 6 runs and then get shut out. Padres also have this problem. It's mind-numbing because if you actually look at the Jays lineup, you go, man, they've got such balance and depth. And you forget Brandon Belt's a DH. Like the eyes immediately go to Bichette and Vlad Jr. And obviously Chapman had a great first month, and Springer's such a catalyst for this team. And you go, but they really are balanced, throughout. Varsho's been better, tremendous defensively. Kirk can do a lot of things for you as a catcher who can actually hit. Jansen when need be. But they have trouble kind of putting together those consistent runs of offense, which is frustrating. Now, pitching, I'll tell you this, Matty. Everybody, if I just say Blue Jays, the first thing they say is what happened to Alek Manoah. Like that's the number one storyline for this team. But here's what I would argue: as concerning and as frustrating as it is, and I don't know, it's mystifying to me, a guy who could be third in the Cy Young voting and then look completely lost and sent down to the minors. Gausman's tremendous. So if you started talking to yourself, okay, listen, Gausman's an elite top 5 pitcher in the American League. Yes. Kikuchi better than advertised. He's been okay. All right, he's at number 3. We can deal with that. That's fine. Bassett, again, inconsistent. Great at home, not so well on the road. But again, if you're expecting, what are you expecting of a third or fourth starter? But Barrios' resurgence to me is critical. If Barrios can go back to being the guy they gave $130 million and believe to be an ace or number 2, well, that's 4 good pitchers. And then you can kind of cobble together the 5th spot, bullpen game, et cetera. So that's the one thing I'll say, Matt, when the concern is what about Manoah? But I go, well, I'd still like to go get a starter. But Gausman's emergence and Barrios' resurgence, that helps settle that dilemma a little bit. Ultimately, you're going to be fighting for a wild card. I think we all know that when it comes to the Jays.
Yeah, and they're right there, right on the outside of it, looking in. Manoah worked yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to see that line. I think 47.
No, he was at an airport.
Pitches. Yeah, and he, it is interesting, and it's just good to see him get 5 innings, struck out 10. Yes, it's Double-A, but if you follow baseball, Double-A is where a lot of the prospects are, right, in comparison to Triple-A. But the thing in watching him this year, obviously he was in his head, right? You could tell he was battling himself. The thing that was curious watching was the pitch clock. Now, the pitch clock in Double-A is actually faster than the pitch clock is at the major league level. And I think that there was something about that, Adnan. I don't know if that's been a discussion, within your MLB network circles of, maybe this pitch clock and him, how he used to, you get up on top of the mound, stare you down, stalk the mound, walk around. There was just this, I got the ball and I'm just going to, right? And yeah. Some of that was missing, and you don't have the time to do a lot of that now.
No, 100%, Matt. And I think that's totally fair to say. I don't think it's an excuse, but I think it's something that certainly is reasonable in pointing out what may have happened to Manoah. I think a big part of it, though, is that confidence that you mentioned. I was talking to Al Leiter about it, and we were talking about Doc Halladay. Remember when Roy Halladay, almost pitched a perfect game or a no-hitter, I think, in his first start, ended up getting sent down to Class A, reworked his whole life, his whole delivery, and a lot of it was mental, a lot of it was psychological. And, Al was talking about the mental ABCs of pitching, that famous book that pitchers have read, and just how important Dorfman's book was to Halladay, et cetera. And he said, with Manoah, it has to be all parts. You can't say this guy would really lose his way just because of something mechanical. It wouldn't just be his delivery or a loss of velocity. Like, as you said, normally he has such aggressiveness, confidence. This guy's leading the league in hit batsmen. Like, he's fearless up there. And you're watching him nibble around the corners. And especially one of his starts, I can't remember which one it was now, but like immediately he was in trouble 2-on. You could tell he was just fighting it, just, unable to throw a strike. And eventually you just got to command the strike. So if you don't have fastball command, you got to find one pitch working for you. All right, fastball's moving around too much, tailing a little bit. Okay, at least I've got my soft stuff. My curveball's good, my sinker, et cetera. And it just seemed like the crisis of confidence would envelop him, and it became like a tsunami. So I really give the Blue Jays organization credit for saying, let's take a step back. We desperately need this guy. We are not going to be truly successful without him, but let's not keep pushing him into places where he's not comfortable right now. Let's go back down. Let's rebuild him, build up his confidence. And like I said, Matt, you can say Double-A, fine, but you're right. Double-A is where most of the prospects are. Double-A, a better level of baseball than Triple-A in many ways. So you take the confidence where it comes from, go step by step. And hopefully when he comes up, let's say it's late July or early August, you say, hey, we're not expecting you to be the savior. We just need you to be a good pitcher. We're looking for 6 innings, four runs. If you can give us that, like, we're totally cool with that. We have enough of an offense that we can pick you up. And he's a well-liked guy by his team. I think everyone feels for him. So you kind of got to just take baby steps and be patient with the process.
Don't you think we forget how young he is? Really?
Yeah, that's a part of it too, John. Like, what happens is guys have these like unreal years. And again, last year he was third in Cy Young voting on all measures. He was incredible. And all of a sudden you go, okay, well, here's our ace. Like, here's our Howdy. Here's our Dave Steve. I'm like, well, it doesn't work that way. Like, it takes a couple of years. Look at our Canadian friend, Mike Soroka with the Braves. He gets called up. He was second in Cy Young, second rookie of the year, sixth in Cy Young. And they suffered injuries for 2+ years. Like these things happen, like physical injuries, mental setbacks. You can't just pencil a guy in baseball. It's too much of a grind. It's too tough a sport to just expect greatness day in and out. That's why you appreciate the guys like Clayton Kershaw making his 10th All-Star game. So I think you're right. The case of Manoah, he's young, and just wait.
Do you think it's realistic to think he can come back before? And really, I think the deadline for him is probably the trade deadline. So that before they have to make a decision on either to let him pitch, find out whether Ryu's good enough to come back and pitch a little bit, or go out and find somebody.
That is going to be the key spot. You're right. July 31st, they're going to have to look at. And right now they've got a few weeks. So he's pitched a couple of times. The first start he got blitzed. Matty mentioned Double A, he was better. So if you tell yourself as an organization, we got a month for this guy to get back to who he is, I don't think that's unfair. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think Alec Manoah would want more time than that either. I don't think anyone's saying, we'll give you till late August. Like, you don't need 2 months to figure out if this is the year. And I can't imagine a scenario in which he's not up with the team making starts again in late July. I think he would just push for it and go, okay, listen, I've gone with the program. It took a month. Let's rebuild some things. I want to get back out there. And the team would have to see what he has. You can't just look at Double A and Triple A. If he struggles and say, okay, I don't think he's ready, you go, all right, well, let's unleash him and give him a shot. But you're right, John. If he's not available, they're going to have to go get a starter. There's no question about it.
It's interesting to me, and I don't know if you've had this conversation with Al Light or whoever at the at MLB Network, but I would think in the offseason leading up to this season that if you were a pitcher and there was a pitch clock that you had zero, remember he had zero exposure and experience with a pitch clock, Alec Manoah. You would think that his offseason would kind of revolve around working with a clock in mind, right? When you're throwing, when you're getting ready for spring training. And I just think that was, and it's not an excuse, as you said, but I just think that is a part of why he has struggled. And I think, there's been conversations about his conditioning. And so all of a sudden you start adding those things up, you can see why quite possibly the struggles have happened. And now you got to go back down to Dunedin and you got to now work your way back up. And there is a major difference. Remember, this is not Greg Maddux picking the corners. You mentioned how he was trying to do some of that, but this is not, the era where you're pitching. It's max velocity, velo. If I hear velo, right? It's max on every single pitch.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you get it back and you look at that pitch clock. Okay, here I come again. And I would imagine that takes a little bit more out of you.
Yeah, I definitely have seen. I was curious, Matt, as far as starters, how long they're going. Now it's about 5 1/3, which again, Al Leiter once said to me, because I said 5 and diving. He said, yeah, we used to make fun of those guys. Like 5 innings, that's all you got. But now it's like, yeah, give us 5 good innings, we're good.
Quality start.
Quality start, exactly. It's ridiculous. But Ron Darling had mentioned the pitch clock to me. We were talking before the season started, and I said, does it favor the pitchers, the hitters? And he goes, it's not a blanket statement. It honestly depends on the game. If the pitcher is in a groove and he's dominating, then it favors the pitcher. If the pitcher is struggling and just can't get rolling, then it favors the hitters. You can't just make a blanket statement and say, all right, the pitch clock favors one or the other. It really is game dependent and time dependent. And in the case of Manoah, you're right. He's generally not a guy that worked fast. And especially when, like you said, you're a big body and you're maxing all the time. Sometimes you need to kind of take that deep breath and just give yourself a second. He doesn't have that now. And that clock, as you know, with basketball, like that shot clock's going down, you feel that urgency, you feel that pressure. And there's no doubt it's been a part of it. And some younger players have had that before as far as the pitch timer, and they're quite acclimated to it. Alec hasn't. Now he's got the time to kind of get through it. And listen, I can't imagine his struggles will continue as they've gone this year. I don't know if he gets back to being the guy he was a year ago, but I can't imagine he doesn't improve after some time taking a step back.